Welcome to this week in Missouri Politics. Busy week in the legislature, maybe a busier one next week. Here to talk about it, Sam Gladney, Democrat running for state representative this year, right?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back. Gene Evans, state representative here in St. Louis County. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
Friend of the show, Nick Shore from over in St. Charles County. Waylon Jennings extraordinaire. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you.
And the gentleman of the Senate, former Senator Jim Lemke. Welcome back, sir.
There are no gentlemen in the Senate.
There is just one. Nick Shore, you, the House and the Senate came together, passing different versions of tax cuts, and maybe it's even a tax reform. Tell me what the House did.
So the House was very busy this past couple weeks. Speaker Pro Tem Elijah Har's bill came through Ways and Means. We saw that it had a little bit of adjusting to do. We tweaked a couple things, and on the floor we had a slew of just different ideas to jump in there from both sides of the aisle. So I think you've seen from the federal standpoint of tax cuts and how they're working, how they're putting more money in the pockets of Americans, Missourians, and what it's doing to the economy. And I think that's why you see both members of the party, or both parties rather, actually wanting to jump on board with tax cuts in some way, shape, or form.
The Senate also perfected some legislation, but also reformed taxes, correct?
Right, and got to hand it to Senator Eigel for working the bill the way he worked it through the process. Again, the House having the conversation. I would, if I had to handicap the thing, I don't think we pass a tax bill this year. But I think the conversation's good. I think that what we need to bring to the table is, unlike what Kansas did, we need to have the discussion about how we downsize government. We need to look at, the cutting of government.
That's the thing they never did, right?
They never did it. I mean, so if you're going to address revenues, you got to address the spending side of the equation. I think it's important for us to have this discussion, and I think that it'll be good for our state.
So you have the next Speaker of the House, Elijah Hart, carrying this bill. You have Bill Eigel, the senator from tax cuts. He 4-hour perfection on this is amazing. But there is some pessimism as there actually be a bill. I believe the governors even came out against, saying he might be against Senator Eigel's bill. Interesting times. Does it pass?
Well, I don't know that people are concerned about the governor, if the governor wants to pass it or not. I mean, if he vetoes it, I think we'll deal with that when it happens. But yeah, I think both of these have a good shot of getting through their respective houses. Whether they can get through the other side is a whole different question. But we've laid the groundwork. When you do something this big, to get it done in 1 year seems, almost impossible. This is big stuff. And if we can lay the groundwork and look at what some of the pitfalls might be, what certain issues might be, and get them worked out now, then next year will be an easier lift.
Because this isn't just a tax cut. This is a reforming the way Missouri takes in revenue. There's a bunch of people say reform sometimes, they don't mean it. In this case, you're not just cutting taxes, but you're reforming the whole way to take in revenue for business.
Well, the streamlined sales tax, which is the internet sales tax, which we have not been collecting, and also the roads and bridges. And so in Har's plan, adding a slightly higher fee on registration will resolve some of the problems we have with not being able to fund the roads and bridges, and also addresses the fact that we have so many electric cars that if you're just paying a gas tax, they're not contributing to that. So looking forward, where we're going to have more electric cars and having a way to take in that revenue, because they're still using the roads, right? So they should pay their fair share. So here's a really forward-looking plan that addresses some of these things. And I think, people talk about, well, we're not going to have enough revenue. I mean, he's looking at revenue from different places where we haven't been able to look at before because our tax plan is so old. It's an archaic plan, and so his plan is much more forward-looking.
So I'm glad if you were the governor, though, and you had everybody from the Attorney General to the Game Board investigating you, you probably are tending to side with the body's tax cut bill that may vote on you first, right?
I think it's important when we're talking about all of these tax cuts and reforming the government to make sure that the most vulnerable in our society are not the hardest hit. That includes seniors and those with disabilities. That's why I really admire the work that Crystal Quade did this week. She stood up on the House floor for about 3.5 hours to make that point. Hopefully we will have a few more Democrats in there after November to help her.
Let me ask you a question, though. It does seem to me, and I'm not a tax increase guy, but I think you have to have more money for roads, or you're not going to be able to keep up. And I think that even Democrats I know say there is a reform that needs to be done. I don't even think it's fair that you don't charge sales tax on an Amazon purchase from Amazon, but you do from Schnucks. I mean, some of the reforms seem necessary.
Some of them are necessary, but I said we do have to make sure that we're looking at this through an equity lens. We don't want to just be constantly hammering some of the people that don't have a voice in our society. We do need to find money for roads and bridges and for the things that the government has to do, but let's make sure that we're looking after those that need to be looked after.
Let's talk about another thing. Speaking of looking after stuff, the Sunshine Law. Speaking of a law that desperately, desperately needs totally redone. It's an analog world and not even a digital age now, a confide age. Where is that bill at right now?
Well, it's on the fast track. So, and Jen Laws voted out the next day. Thank you to the chairman and Nick, who's also on that committee. And then it was voted out of rules the following week. So I look for it to be on the calendar soon.
Nick Shore, is this something Republicans are actually committed to? Not, we've seen the demagogues say they're for transparency. Clearly, that was all hocus pocus. Does the legislature mean it? Can they get this done?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a new crew of individuals, some young Republicans that have come in, fully transparent. My cell phone number's out there. You know, I work for the people. I listen to the people. And I think that when you look at the bill that came forward, it actually gives this teeth. So what we need to crack down on the people that aren't abiding by the Sunshine Requests, Sunshine Laws, and actually hold them accountable, hold them and prosecute them.
If he's in church right now, you get an amen from me. Certainly, isn't this how we do things in America sometimes? We have a tragedy, maybe the most scandal-ridden, least transparent governor in the state's history. This is how you actually get a Sunshine Law reform, correct?
Listen, we just need to make the law clear. You know, I think that we haven't, you know, how does it apply? How does it apply to the legislature? I think we need to be careful, though. I think that communication that a legislator has with their constituency, there's some things that can be pretty sensitive, you know, there. But just make the law clear, you know, and that I think that's important.
I think there is some ambiguity about the Sunshine Law.
I think there is.
But to me, if you do work, it's not for the media. It's for a gun store owner in Kennett. It's for a farmer in Kirksville. If you're taking their money to do work you say is for them, you answer to them, right? And your information should be open to that person that's paying for it.
Right, right.
And if you want to be in the private sector, you should go there. Sam Gladney. I wonder, I've heard Republicans say this. I've heard Republicans demagogue it. Are they really going to, do you think, pass a bill that makes the Sunshine Law have teeth?
I hope so, and what I'm hearing on this panel makes me really optimistic. It's one of those things that makes me feel good about some of the things our government is doing, which doesn't happen that often. You know, I think we need transparency in our government. I think we need accountability in it. The voters are asking for it. I think people of both parties are realizing we need it, so maybe we can, you know, end the session on a high note and get something good done.
Prediction, does this make it through to the governors, and if it's vetoed? I mean, he's in an odd spot with that bill. If he signs it, the judge will open up an investigation that he's closed. If he vetoes it, do they override it? Does this actually become law?
It becomes law.
Yeah,
prediction?
Absolutely.
His liaison told me he would sign it.
Prediction?
Yes.
Interesting. Let's talk about another thing. Speaking of the Attorney General, who's pushed the Sunshine Law, he opened up an investigation this week. There's a housing development in St. Louis, rat-infested. Senator Jamila Nasheed has done a lot of work to bring attention to it. He's opened up that investigation. What happens there?
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It's something that's been in the news for quite some time. The Attorney General has his hands full with the Facebook investigation, with this in the city of St. Louis. He's been busy working to try to investigate all these issues. But with that, something has needed to be done for some time. You've heard the horror stories of, you know, infested living conditions that I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm not too familiar with it. But talking to my colleagues Bruce Franks and Jamila, it's a scary situation.
Yeah, but
The interesting thing about this issue, and I'm glad that the AG is engaging on this, but the reason he's able to engage is a little inside baseball. Because of the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act, that gives him original jurisdiction in this case. Well, for the last 2 years, there's been an attack by the legislature in introducing bills to take away and gut the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act. So I just think it's an interesting twist on the story.
it is interesting. I mean, I think it shows the Attorney General listening even to Jamila Nasheed, who I assume probably does not check his box in November when he runs for U.S. Senate, but he is showing some concern for an area of the state that is interesting. If the state if they're not gonna fund the housing thing, should they shut it down?
Well, speaking of the Attorney General, he's just doing his job. I mean, he's been doing his job since he's been there, and I know he faced some criticism from people on our side of the aisle about not campaigning enough. The guy's he's at work, right? So he's investigating the governor, he's investigating in this situation. They've had some requests with St. Louis County government, Greene County government. I mean, he is all over the state doing his job, and he's got great people working for him. I mean, we interact with them sometimes. So I think this is a case of him doing his job. And it's not the first time when there's been some legislation, you know, that sort of he has utilized a law that we are working on in the House and the Senate, because there was something with the arbitration agreement too, where he had signed something and we had a bill and there was a little bit of conflict there. And now with the Merchandising Practices Act, he's not going to allow politics to interfere with him doing his job.
It's hard to campaign if the guy you're criminally investigating insists on trying to follow you around the state to Lincoln days, right?
It is. I mean, and on this issue, I think it's also important to note that Senator McCaskill has been involved in this pretty heavily as well. I believe on March 19th, so a couple of weeks back even, she sent a letter to HUD Secretary Carson indicating she's going to look into this. And I think anybody that knows her and knows her reputation knows she's a dog with a bone and she's going to stay on it. We need pressure from all sides, both state and federal, to make sure that this gets fixed.
And we'll be right back to talk about and break down all those investigations the governor's under after this.
In 2008, Republic Services acquired the Bridgeton landfill in a merger. Since then, we've invested $200 million to clean up the site and to maintain environmental compliance. We do that while staffing the facility 24/7. That's because we support permanent solutions that are safe for our neighbors and clean up the environment. We're committed to doing what's right. That's what drives us every day. We're a part of the community, and we are here for the long haul. Republic Services. We'll handle it from here.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to this week in Missouri Politics, joined by former Senator Jim Lemke, Representative Nick Shore, Sam Gladney, running for state rep, and Representative Gene Evans of St. Louis County. Your chamber has produced a report, is in the process of. This week, they've investigated the governor. We've all heard about the witnesses and the things they've been doing. It's led by Chairman Jay Barnes. That report will come out sometime in the next week. How does the House handle that, and what are the steps going forward, and what is the mood inside your caucus?
Well, we don't know what's in it, and that will determine, what happens after that. But I would say there's a lot of apprehension. There's been rumors flying around since who knows when, and they just keep intensifying. And so the rumors are that it's going to be very tawdry and unpleasant to read in terms of some of the conduct. And so I think for many of us, that's just not something we want. We want our government to be about what we're doing, and we want people to be focused on good legislation. And unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to be more of a distraction, and also some things that, quite honestly, you just don't want to read. I don't want to poke into somebody else's personal life, and it's going to be out there, and it's going to be unpleasant.
Sure, it'll be another time when the state of Missouri is in national headlines for shame and embarrassment.
Yeah, up until this point, it has not been a distraction. We dealt with Nixon before I was there, and I heard that, through the vetoes and him not being around to speak with the colleagues.
Jay Nixon never shamed the state of Missouri.
Well, and I agree. This is a totally different situation. But the House and the Senate continue to go to work, whatever's happening in the governor's mansion or outside of the governor's mansion. But this is a little bit different. When the report's going to come out from a guy that I respect wholeheartedly, he is a colleague of mine and a fellow barrister, Jay Barnes. I know he's doing his due diligence and looking into it. So I'm excited, but at the same point, a little cautious to look into this report to see what it is, because it could not only hurt our party, could not only hurt the state of Missouri. This could be damage is not going to be undone for many years. So I think this week we're going to work together with our colleagues and see if there's anything in there that would warrant an impeachment, or is it just something that we know he's not going to get reelected based upon some decisions he made.
It is an interesting thing. I mean, there are party concerns, but I get the sense amongst House leadership that this isn't about the party. This isn't about some donors in some corner of the state. This is about a lot of gravity to the situation.
Well, quite frankly, things are piling up on this governor. And I'm proud of both the House and the Senate in that they have really done good work this session, besides all these things that are piling up, you know, to get work done for the people of Missouri. So after this report comes out next week, we'll have to see how that affects the process. I'm in the camp, though, that I think that the Senate and the House will continue to do their business. Now, they're going to have more on their plate if, as the representative said...
You've had 7 pretty substantial House members that have been taking time to work on this.
Right.
Above any, I mean, I think they've had to put this above anything else. There's already been some, but I do think you're right. The response has been to kind of put their head down and maybe even bring people together a little closer than they would have been.
And we've got a balanced budget to pass. Yeah. You know, the Senate gets the budget this week, and you know, we've got some work to do. Mm-hmm. And so I really believe that the legislature will stay on task, but this is another thing on their plate that's going to make it very difficult in these closing 6 weeks. Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I know people don't want to make this about party, and I actually believe the House leadership at least has taken this pretty seriously. But there is a political element to this, and if you're a Democrat, you've got to be secretly hoping that Eric Greitens is governor for as long as he can be.
Well, I'm hoping the facts come out. You know, we are in this position because the governor put us here. It wasn't George Soros. It wasn't a liberal media conspiracy. The governor made mistakes. He has to own up to those mistakes. And it looks like the House has been doing, from everything that I've read, has been doing a good and impartial job of looking at this like adults. And I think that he's going to be held accountable one way or the other. But make no mistake about it, to the extent that you just said this isn't political, it isn't. A man made some very bad mistakes, and he should be held accountable for them.
Make sure the response out of the governor's folks have been, this is some George Soros or Cobra commander or group of cabal has wanted to pick on him. Well, I don't think Josh Hawley is ran by George Soros. He this week subpoenaed the Greitens group, and I guess Eric Greitens is the agent of that. His investigation seems to be moving forward. I think that probably takes this, as Senator said, things are piling up to a different level.
Yeah. You know, again, I respect and appreciate the work that Josh Hawley has done. His plate is full with the things that have occurred with Facebook, his other investigations, and running a campaign at the same time. But this is something where my colleagues in the House, we're going to wait and see what the facts are. We're not listening to the smoke and mirrors games from either party or any pundit out there. We're waiting to see what comes out after my colleague looks into it. The panel looks into it, and we got to see what
politically, what are you hearing, though? It is tough when Josh Hawley can't come to some events he probably would like to come to because the person he's criminally investigating is there.
Yeah, and it is tough. I've had people at Lincoln Days ask me why he's not there. Well, he's doing work. Yeah. Sometimes when I can't make an event after coming back from session, I'm supposed to be at work today. So shortly after we conclude here, I'm going to go back to work on some suits, work on some contracts. But that's something that a lot of people fail to realize is that this gentleman, Josh Hawley, is working for the state of Missouri.
Interestingly enough, too, you've got a number of different dynamics going on here. I mean, you've got Josh Hawley and his investigation, the subpoenas that you mentioned, looking into something that may be criminal. But you got to remember, too, the investigation that comes out of the House, the standards for impeachment as far as moral turpitude, they're very broad, as far as how that can be applied. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon the House and their work, through this report. And then if it gets through that process, coming to the Senate and the trial that goes on there. But I'll tell you, this has been an embarrassment to our state. It's been very disappointing. As an early supporter of the governor, I was one of the first that came out supporting his candidacy. It's really been a weight on me personally and on the state.
Well, I think we keep talking about how hard Hawley is working, and I was speaking with a more senior rep yesterday on the House floor, and he was sharing his disappointment, and not necessarily in the governor's personal life, but in the fact that he doesn't feel like he's doing his job, that we have appointments that haven't been made, that he, as far as we know, he had not met with, Senator Eigel to talk about his tax plan, even though he had promised that for months, and just a lot of the things that the governor should do. I mean, we have vacancies, including the Ethics Commission, but here in Metro, you know, we have vacancies where we need appointments and other things that need to be done, and we need a governor who's going to do them. Regardless of any distractions, we're doing our work, he should be doing his. And so I think that people who put aside these things as personal matters are still disappointed because they feel like our governor is not doing his job and showing up every day and doing the things that the state of Missouri needs him to do, and being a leader, which is what I think that's one of the main reasons people voted for him, because they saw a leader, and we're not seeing a leader right now. In fact, we're not really seeing anybody. I haven't seen the governor in months, so it's disappointing.
Similarly, there is a political element to this. I mean, Josh Hawley is running for U.S. Senate. I opened my computer the other day, and the first thing I saw was an ad from Claire McCaskill, or from a group, I don't know if it was actually her campaign, tying the two of them together, which I think any politician at this table would do if they were in her spot.
Agreed. You can't be pro the governor when it's in your interest and then anti the governor when it's in your interest. You know, it's easy right now to pile on Eric Greitens. Everybody's doing it. That doesn't show integrity. What would have showed integrity is 6 months ago when he was running around on Facebook calling all members of the legislature corrupt and whatever else, standing up to him then. Where were you then when we needed that voice, when that bullying was happening from all kinds of places? He wasn't anywhere to be found. So I think that my guess would be Senator McCaskill will make that point pretty clearly, that it's easy to pile on him now. Where were you then?
Do you think this is just a time for, if Republicans are going to stand by this governor, just to put the value stuff out of the question? Just say we're not a party that cares about that anymore.
Yeah, and you know, going back to the beginning of the year when all this stuff started coming out, even last year when quote-unquote bullying allegations were made, the House continued to do their work. The Senate continued to do their work. I know Senator Bill Eigel went in district, spoke with many business owners about this tax plan. So it's something that we really, and I can't speak for Gene, I can't speak for everybody, but the majority of the colleagues that I've spoken with, it goes through one ear and out the other until the facts are on the table. Interesting.
Let's talk about the thing that is policy related. You've had to raise the age bill. Tell me what that is one more time, and does it pass?
Yeah, so raise the age, it's something that is massively supported by both sides. We've got ALEC, Show Me Institute, ACLU, Newt Gingrich is for this. What it would do is get us in line with 45 other states that have already done this, and holding 17-year-olds, which are treated as juveniles in 99% of the situations in the state of Missouri, except for one, and that's our criminal justice system. So it would allow 17-year-olds to start in the process of the criminal justice system, get the same resources that all these other kids are doing or getting, and what it's doing is breaking down the reoffending rates, the recidivism rates. So that's a huge strain on taxpayers.
Where's it at in the process?
So right now we worked on it, kind of flipped it this year. We've got Wayne working on his Senate bill. Already went through the Senate, unanimously voted through. We're fixing a little bit of a funding source. It should get voted out this week and shortly should be on the floor.
Does this happen?
I think so. I think this is a year. It's got a lot of momentum behind it. It's kind of common sense legislation, so hopefully it'll get done.
So it's a piece of legislation that seems to have Democrat support as well.
I would think so. It seems like it has a lot of support, both the ACLU and Newt Gingrich. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. So congratulations on that.
So, I mean, coming through the Senate, I think Senator Wayne Wallingford from Cape Girardeau, it's a testament to him, but it seems like this is an idea. I've seen several bills like this, that the first year people are getting educated, finding out in the second year maybe it's ripe enough to move.
Well, we have to do something in this area. I mean, we're filling up prisons. You're talking about building 2 new prisons. And this budget is going through the roof for corrections. So if this is something that'll help in that regard, then we need to get it done.
Yeah, and if we can prevent career criminals from going down that path, if we can teach them how to become successful members, productive members of society, where but for this black mark on their resume would stop them from getting in the military, getting a job, getting a scholarship, going to college, now they're able to make money here, spend money here, have kids here,
produce,
and watch the Cardinals.
No, I'm for that. I remember we were in the legislative library. You had data on this. I thought that was an interesting thing where you could talk about all these theoretical things, but you actually had data from other states that I thought was interesting. Yeah.
You know, at the Show Me State, that's something that we need to do. Look at the other states to see what's worked, what hasn't worked, and this is an area of criminal justice reform that's sound in the statistics that are coming from these other states.
Senator, there's a SJR from Senator Holzman out of Kansas City. It's going to change term limits, give folks the chance to vote on changing them. Instead of 8 years plus 8 years in the Senate, 8 years now, say you're Senate for 16, you could serve 16 either body. Does that have a chance to move in the Senate?
It does. It does. Actually, it's made it through the first round. So I think that it's an important bill. I'm supportive of it. Yeah. I think it'll stop the Houseification of the Senate.
Senator Holzman has done a lot of work on that, too.
He has. He's worked across the aisle, done a good job.
Representative, I mean, it's an interesting concept. You're on the first term of what would be 4 in the House. I think term limits have had some good things, but maybe tweaking them, maybe it's time.
Yeah, I think so. I like the plan. It's similar to a plan that Representative Plocher had last year, and just mixes things up a little bit. As far as term limits, they're good and bad. You know, there are good things about them, and there are bad things about them. But I think the public has to vote on this, and I just don't think the public is going to do away with term limits, but they might be open to tweaking them a little bit.
What do you think?
It's a good idea. You know, the Raise the Age movement was something that my colleagues had no idea about, but it had been around for a decade. This is a bill that's been pushed. So the people with the institutional knowledge are the lobbyists, and the people that need to be getting the work done for the people of Missouri are worried about running again next year. And then there's a lot of jockeying for position of who's going to run for the Senate, who's going to run for this spot. And I think it's going to take a lot of the strain away from that area where we can actually work and concern ourselves more with what the people want, and that's what we should be doing.
What do you think?
From what I've seen just knocking doors, since I'm obviously running right now, is that, you know, people want term limits, but I don't think they care much if it's 8 in the House, 8 in the Senate. They want to stop people from staying in politics forever. So if you get somebody who's a member of the House and is really good from either party and they want to stay there for 16 years, you know, work their way up in a committee, they should be able to do that. They shouldn't have to run for Senate if they like where they are. I think that's a good idea, and it keeps with the intent of what people are looking for.
Yeah, I think it preserves the intent and integrity. Now, Representative Koenig had an amendment to make leadership only 4 years, correct?
Right, and I think that's a good amendment. It's a good compromise in that the centralizing power is never a good thing. You know.
Sam Gladney with a minute left. Who won the week?
I'm going to say Crystal Quaid. I alluded to this earlier. I think she's doing great work with a number of the other House Democrats in the minority. We are in an extreme minority right now. I think that'll change in November, but right now we have to stand up for our principles and our values, and she's doing a good job of that.
Who won the week?
I'm going to say my Congresswoman, Ann Wagner. We're seeing some of these trafficking websites shut down based on her legislation, and she's been working on this for a long time.
Ann Wagner may have won the year. I don't think there's any Missouri politician on the role that she's on right now.
Yeah, she's doing great.
Who won the week?
I'd say a fellow freshman to the legislative process, and that's Attorney General Josh Hawley. He's shown that he's got Missouri's best interests in mind, and I'm hopeful that he's going to be our next U.S. Senator.
Okay, convert. Who won?
I'm going to say my boss, Rob Schaaf, and I've peered into the Stein of knowledge, and he's going to win the next 6 weeks in a row.
If anybody has the potential, they could. I'm going to say Jimmy the Cat Hayes from Fox Sports Midwest covers the Cardinals. The new alderman from some small town.
Crystal Lake Park?
Crystal Lake Park, there you go. He won the week for sure, joining the ranks. Maybe he'll be now a watcher of This Week in Missouri Politics. I want to tell everybody, Show Me Missouri, a new concept we'll have. Go to MissouriTimes.com. We're going to do the history of Missouri one county at a time. We'll be in St. John County this week, so go to MissouriTimes.com to listen to it. We'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.